Hello, as you all know that this is Physics Solution channel. So we only based on explanation on some topics on physics and some solution to some questions. So we are going to start with three Newton law of motion, which are some basics topic in physics. So for you to understand this, you have to listen very well and make sure you subscribe to this channel. It's very important so that you always see our video whenever we uploaded it. So I'm going to start with the first law of motion now. Talking about Newton law of motion, we have three Newton law of motion. So in terms of classical mechanics. So now we want to talk about the first law. Talking about the first law, that's why we have the first law. The Newton first law of motion states that every object in motion will continue in motion, and every object at rest will continue at rest until it is being expelled by an external force. For example, when you have a stone on a ground, a stone on the ground, it will remain at rest until you push it or you carry. That means you apply an external force before the object can be moved from its initial position. Okay, there's another example talking about a car. When a car is in a motion, for you to stop the car will always continue in that motion. It will continue in that motion until you apply an external force for the car to be stopped. For example, when the car is moving, you can only apply an external force to match the brake. When you don't match the brake, that means when you don't apply an external force, the object, which is the car, will always continue in motion. This is what leads us to the second law, which states that the net force of an object with a constant mass is equal to the product of its mass and distance and acceleration. So in this case, that means when an object is in a position, you must apply an external force before the object can be moved from that position. This is very simple. We have to write some mathematical formula just to explain this. The force you apply to this object for the object to move from its initial point is what we call F is equal to ma. That means the force applied to that object is equal to the product of its mass and distance. So the force you apply to that object in a position is what we call F is equal to ma, which leads us to the second law of motion. That is, the second law of motion is just telling you that the force you are applying to that object is F is equal to ma. Even when the car is in a motion, for example, I use that as an example then. When a car is in a motion, the force you apply, when you match your brake, you apply some force. That force is equal to ma. That's the force you apply to that object in order for the object to stop or to continue in a motion. Now, this is what leads us to the third law. In some cases, most cases, when you apply that force, there is another force exerted by the object against the normal force you are applying. For example, now, talking about the third law states that for every action, there is equal and opposite force. For every action, there is equal and opposite reaction rather. For every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. This is what it means. For example, when you apply that force to an object on the ground, maybe the object is at rest, the object also apply another force against the force you are applying to that object. For example, when you are moving on the road, you are applying normal force, which is your force. For you to move on a road, you are applying a force. And also, the surface you are applying a force to is also applying another force, which is called frictional force. So in every case, when you apply a force, there is always another force applying against the normal force you are applying. So that is what leads us to the third law. So the third law states that for every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. When a car is moving, you are applying your force, which is ma, to press the brake, to match the brake. The car is also applying another force against the force will be against the normal force you are producing. So when you have an object at rest, when the object is at rest and you are trying to produce your normal force, which is F is equal to ma, to push the object, there's another force exerted by that object, which is opposite to your force, the force you are exerting. and is opposite to it. So that is just it. They have magnitude. Both the force have magnitude, but the difference is that they are opposite in direction. When you are producing a force, when you are producing a force in y direction, the object producing another force will be opposite to the force you are producing. So that's all about today's lecture. I've already explained to you the 3 Newton law of motion. That's all about the 3 Newton law of motion. That is very simple. When you follow the normal, when you just listen to the video, and you surely understand it. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. So this is all for today. And next lecture we'll be talking about dealing with some questions, or we go into motion on a straight line. We have some formula given by Newton or proposed by Newton. These formulas are used for motion on objects on a motion on a straight line. That means translation motion. So this is where I will stop today. Have a nice day.